to our show. Welcome to our show. It's a good show. Big, big shoe. It's really huge.
Hi, I'm Debbie Rochon, and you're listening to Talkin Troma with Zach Bynes. Don't go anywhere, or I'll fucking kill you.
It's really huge. Welcome to the show.
Good morning, Tromaville, and welcome to episode 10, the season finale of Talkin Troma, with your host, me, Zach Bynes. Today, I have a very special guest on the show, which you probably guessed from the title of the episode when you click play in your podcast player. But I do want to say thank you for everybody out there who's listened so far. I appreciate all the feedback I've gotten from the show and that I've been able to share my love of Troma. Don't worry, I'm not going away. This is just a quick break while I have to pack up and move houses. And I'm going to come back with even more crazy Troma movies that some of you probably have never heard of, and some that you have, more special guests and all that fun stuff. I do want to hear from you, though. Hit me up at Talkin Troma on Twitter, and our comment on YouTube, or find me on Facebook, or any of that, at Lego Larry on Instagram and Twitter for me, Zach Bynes on Facebook, and tell me what you like about the show, what you don't like about the show. Is the double feature part of the show something that you guys like, or does it feel a little too much for you? Is there a Troma movie that you're like, why the fuck haven't you talked about this yet? I really want to hear about Fertilized a Blaspheming Bombshell, or Blondes Have More Guns, or Femme Fontaine, Killer Babe from the CIA. Or is there a guest that you want to have on the show? I am planning on getting Lloyd coming up, probably for, a more milestone episode, hopefully like 25, if when I get that far. Or do you think, hey, I have this Troma movie that nobody ever talks about, and I want to talk to Zach about this title? I would love for you to hit me up and come on the show. So without further ado, let's hop into the season finale of Talkin Troma. Hear the interview with Tromaville royalty right after the Tromaville Cafe theme song. Let's go! She is in almost 300 movies. Nearly 25 of those are Troma films or projects. A veteran of independent cinema, scream queen, and Troma royalty. Ladies and gentlemen, the fabulous Debbie Rochon.
Oh, hello, Zach. Thanks for having me on. This is awesome. I'm so
Thank
excited
you for coming
to be here.
I'm excited to talk to you. We've talked briefly on Poultry Guys, which we'll get to, and briefly at conventions, but I'm excited to pick your brain about all the different Troma movies and stuff you've worked on.
Yeah, and there's a lot. I mean, if you include all the productions and all the, flights to Cannes and all this kind of stuff, yeah, it goes pretty deep. It goes pretty deep, yeah.
So I'm just going to dive right in. So the first thing that I could find that you worked with Troma is back in 1993 for the Troma System, where you played Edna Perlmutter, who was just stressed out with her 8 children. Was that the first thing you ever did with Troma?
It wasn't the very first thing, but it was it was up there. I mean, I had done some poster art with them where, they'd pick up titles and they'd reshoot the cover, retitle the movie and all that kind of stuff, recut it in some cases. So I did that with them. I had met Lloyd because I was doing an interview for a magazine. I was writing about Troma, and I was also an actress at that time, of course. And so I did like some of the poster art with them, and then some of the live events, like New York City Hall would have a film event in Central Park, and I would go there with Troma. And then we did a bunch of wraparound for various cable channels when they were coming up, like all over the world, be it Germany or, in the States or whatever. So I was doing like a lot of that. And then came the Troma system for Comedy Central, which was called Ha Ha when it first started. For I think a very, very short amount of time, it was called Ha Ha Channel.
That's probably a good idea they changed that name.
Yeah, I think it was a great idea. But it was fun because obviously it was a takeoff on the infomercials that were crazy then. Like there were so many of them on all the time on TV. So it was a takeoff on them, but at the same time, we were really making one that you could buy something from, which is pure Troma. So it was a lot of fun. And we did something at Comedy Central, and, Bill Maher was there, and a couple other people, I'll think of their names in a minute, but they were just coming through. They were just starting out and, just walking through the halls and doing their thing. And, Jackie the Joke Man was there. And, so it was like a really interesting time. It was a really interesting time.
I was going to ask, because you are on a lot of different Troma movie posters for stuff that you're not in. Has that ever caused confusion, like with your fans? Like, why aren't you in the Horror of the Humongous Hungen?
Right. Not really. I mean, I think by the time I was doing anything to have any fans, I think they pretty much knew the story, and certainly the story of Troma. So I don't think it's ever really caused any confusion. It might nowadays, but back then I think everybody was pretty hip to
what's going on.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, I always thought it was fun seeing you on the posters. Like, I know that movie, but so it was always kind of fun.
Yeah. That was common back then. Very common.
Yeah. And then there was like the Troma Theater and Tromaville Cafe where you played Super Tromat Hypothermia. Did you ever have any other Super Tromat names that you remember? Or was it always Hypothermia?
It was, it was Hypothermia. If there was, I don't remember. And I remember that Lloyd he would never call the actresses their names. He would just sort of give them like traumatized names. So you never really knew what name, well, I was going to say what you're going to be called, but what name you were going to be called. And of course you just went with it because it was, it was just acting and you were having fun, and Lloyd was just throwing that at you. So it was like, yeah, okay, I'm Hypothermia today. And so yeah, he kind of did that. It was very smart in a lot of ways because he kept the Troma universe itself. Like he kept it within the Troma universe. It wasn't like, oh, here's, so-and-so, trying to make it about them, so to speak. Yeah. Within keeping in the universe, if you will. And everybody knows universes now because of, MCU and all these different ones that they have. But then it was like the Troma universe. And so if I was called anything else, that's an interesting statement. If I was, I didn't know. So I think it was pretty much myself and others called Hypothermia. I don't think I was the only Hypothermia.
I had a friend, she got the nickname Super Tromat Diarrhea, and I felt a little bad at the time. She's like,
why'd I get that one? I know. And it's whatever comes to Lloyd in the moment. So it's like reflective of like, hope he's having a great day because who knows what you're going to be today. So yes, whatever comes to his mind. It's certainly not written. So yeah, I feel for her. I feel for her. Yeah, I do.
How much of those early like skits and like the Tromaville Cafe stuff was like actually scripted out, or how much was improvised on set?
Well, it was all scripted out. Like it was really scripted out, quite a bit, because the beginning Tromaville Cafe stuff, James Gunn wrote, and he was in
Yeah,
as well. So like he had a very clear vision, like where it was all going to go, and the stories within them. You could improvise if you wanted to. I think for myself, there might have been a little less improvisation than some, yes, but it was kind of like I was just getting my chops. He had written stuff that was so tight, if you will, and we just kind of went with it, and we just followed the script. Then by the time it mutated into like 2 or 3 different shows later, and it was Troma's Edge TV, and Doug Sackman was directing and shooting it. I mean, when we would go to like Central Park or
yeah,
somewhere, he also had a script that he wrote, and it was always really good because he's an incredibly talented guy. Like he really
yeah,
is. And that's sort of jumping ahead a bit because that was after Citizen Toxie, where he came on board and worked at Troma. But as far as those shows go, he would definitely, love tons of improvisation, but he was cool too because he would shoot in sequence. So wherever you went with it, or wherever he suggested that you go with it,
yeah.
it was always like it made sense. It wasn't like something he couldn't cut together. So it was amazing that Lloyd was I really want to say lucky enough, really, because he had like all these great people making these shows. And they were always like really talented, and they went on to be in their own unique ways extremely successful.
Yeah.
Um, and they all are, and like I say, in their own unique ways. So I mean, yeah, I think it was really lucky to have like such powerful talent behind it all.
Was Lloyd on set a lot for those Tromaville cafes and skits, or just like his cameo, or did he direct a lot of those?
He was on mostly just for his cameo, but he was in a lot of it, keep in mind. I think in the beginning, certainly with the Tromaville Cafe, he was there overseeing it as well because it was kind of new, this particular idea. I mean, he had done so much stuff, but this particular idea was new, and so he was there to oversee it.
Yeah.
But I mean, quite often it was just James because at a certain point in the day, I mean, the funny thing about Lloyd is he's or at least was a very 9 to 5 guy. So I mean, if you got there at 7:30 or 8 to get ready, and 5 o'clock rolled around and it wasn't done, he was like, "Okay, you guys know what you're doing. I'll see you tomorrow." And he would, if he was
Yeah.
done with his part on camera, he would just, head out and leave it to the kids, if you will.
Yeah.
So yeah, but he was there for a lot of it. A lot less for Doug Sackman's stuff because I know he was busy doing other stuff, and he would just shoot his parts at that point. But he was so, I mean, it was so understood, and he knew Doug certainly, and whoever was doing shooting so well at that point that he was comfortable like letting the inmates of the asylum run the show. So it's good.
So in those early days, was Michael Hers more around on any of the projects or have any input? I know later on he definitely removed himself, but I know like in the Troma system he shows up, so and a little bit in Tromaville Cafe, but not much. So I wasn't sure how much involvement he had there.
Yeah, so that's an interesting point because when I started there and we were doing like intros for the VHS boxes,
Yes.
the VHS cassettes, I should say, he was in the little bits where we're all dancing to no music and, having fun and, hey, get Sergeant Kabuki, man, NYPD. And it'd be Lloyd and Michael Hers in the front. And it would be us dancing around, to no music in the background. And so he was very involved. for quite some time. And it wasn't until Tromeo and Juliet that he really, I don't want to say stop being involved, because obviously it's his money, and
Yeah.
he was always extremely generous with doing what Lloyd wanted to do. So, and okaying it, that's really big. And
Yeah.
so you can't underscore that. But his appearance in front of the camera really stopped with Tromeo and Juliet. It was my understanding at the time, and let Lloyd correct me, but he did not want to do that. Like, he wasn't interested in it. It wasn't like,
Yeah.
oh, I don't want to do that script so much. It was kind of like he was more interested in maybe more Toxie, or, whatever he was interested in at the time, more Class of Nukem High type of movies. And it probably felt like a big deviation.
Yeah.
But so he was just like, okay, well, you do it, you Lloyd, do it. And so Lloyd and James Gunn did it, and it was a really good call on their part, because the deviation really, in my personal opinion, I wasn't, I don't know the situation of the
Yeah.
book, but I think it was a good turn for them, and it was a good new, like, reimagining, if you will.
Certainly. And so on Tromeo and Juliet, you play Ness,
Yes.
the nurse.
Yeah.
Uh, and that was my first introduction to you, was when I saw it. Well, maybe the introductions on the tapes, but definitely in a larger scope. And I was convinced. Well, first I didn't recognize you from the intros. You had all the tattoos and the piercings, and they looked
Yeah.
so realistic.
Yeah. I know, they really do. Like, we spent hours every day putting those tattoos and gluing the piercings on. I mean, I really got my belly button pierced prior to the shoot, because I really felt like, from my training, and people watching this will probably think this is a strange comment coming from me, but I actually come from like a lot of acting school training and theater prior to this. So to me, I was like, well, I have to experience something. So, like, I got my belly button done, because I wanted to, like, at least know what a piercing felt like. So I was
Yeah.
going to be, totally pierced and tattooed up. And so I had that done. And but we spent a lot of hours every day just in makeup, like, to make sure that they were, not running, or they were clear as the day before. And they did really an outstanding job. So yeah.
They're super realistic. In Tromeo and Juliet, did you audition for that role, or with your prior experience and just relationship with James and Lloyd and everybody, did they just offer that to you?
Well, it was a strange combination of both. I definitely auditioned for it prior to James writing his script. And as a matter of fact, it was on the infomercial set, which was at Lloyd's house, that he gave me his version, before it turned into the other one, of Tromeo and Juliet. And he said, read this and see if there's anything you like in it. And I, took it home and I read it and everything. And then fast forward, maybe 8 months or so, and they had a different script. And they did, like, as they do to this day, like, even if it's not
Yeah.
worded as an audition, like Shakespeare Shitstorm is like, you're sending in video of yourself, because two things. One is, like, they want to get the right person to do the right role. Like, you may be in it, like, you may have that sort of edge if you've been with the company, but what role is what they're looking at, and who
Yeah.
looks good with who. So when I auditioned, and I wasn't even, like, really, I was so not right for it, but what I read for was Juliet. But that's perfectly fine, because they could see you, they could hear you, and they can imagine you as whatever character they want. So I did read technically the lines of Juliet, but even myself, I was like, well, I'm not Juliet. Like, Juliet is just a different type than me.
Yeah.
So but yeah, like, even to this day, he will still, whether he calls it or not, he will you send in a tape, and then also what happens is, a lot of the rewriting will come from the tapes as well. So there's a reason behind the madness. There always is.
So on Tromeo and Juliet and just looking at Shitstorm, was there a difference between how the Troma team worked and lived? I know like on Shitstorm and Poultrygeist and Citizen Toxie, all those like people were, living basically at the locations and flew in all over the world because they were Troma fans. Is that the same thing on Tromeo and Juliet?
Well, it wasn't. If there was people that flew in, I didn't know, because I don't think I was as deeply aware of those types of things. It's a strange thing to say. The reason I say that is because we shot Tromeo and Juliet locations all in New York. We all lived in New York.
Yeah.
So we all went home every night, and that included the crew. So we would just show up at whatever location. There'd be a van in Union Square, 14th Street, Union Square, that would pick up all the actors, which was very close to me because I lived in the East Village. So all the actors would like fall in. Some had been up all night, and some were like, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. But whatever the case may be, we would sort of fall in, and it was the same with Terra Firma. It was all extremely local. So, but as far as like the crew goes, to the best of my knowledge, they were also local. I don't believe, and I could be very wrong, but I don't believe people sort of flying themselves in to work on the movie was quite happening for that movie anyway.
How much of Romeo and Juliet was directed by Lloyd, and how much was directed by James? I know in the book, James talks about interjecting things here and there, and just kind of given his status now as director, it'd be curious to know, like, was it 50-50 or Lloyd doing more of the directing on there, or?
Right, and that's like it's such a good question, because the truth is, we did all of our rehearsals with James. So, and they rented the space in Times Square, and I'll never forget, like, the amount of times I had to go there, and I was rehearsing with Jane Jensen, who played Juliet. So I remember, and this is not meant to be like scandalous, but I just, this is a reflection of me. I'm not, putting a reflection on anybody else when I say this, but it really is like where Lloyd comes from, that, if people are going to be nude in a movie, then they must rehearse that way. Otherwise, he's afraid they're going to bag on him in the middle of the shoot, and it's going to destroy the movie for what he wants, if he wants it in that scene. Like, it's important to him to have it in that scene as a director, right? So I remember not just the rehearsing acting wise, but I remember James was like, okay, and can you guys do it like you're gonna do it, like, whatever it is, topless or whatever. And I remember saying, I said, no, I can't. Like, I'm in the moment, I'll have no problem, but I'm not comfortable doing that. And I was like, I felt really bad, but it was just like, as they say nowadays, my truth. It was sort of like, I knew that I could do it in the moment because all the adrenaline's going, it's important, everything's set up, everybody is like working on their own stuff. And, but I felt like it was like so intimate that it was almost more uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? As opposed to like the mad rush of everything going on and like it not being a big deal, and you're moving on to the next scene in a second. And so it was really weird. But he did all the rehearsals with the actors. So on set, he would direct all of the actors. And Lloyd was directing more of like the camera work, the technical aspects, the shots, if you will, that sort of part of it. And James, having so much to do with the script, was working really heavily with the actors. So if you were to ask an actor who was the main director, they wouldn't be wrong if they said James.
Yeah.
If you to speak to the crew members, they wouldn't be wrong if they said Lloyd. So it was really depending on what department you were working in, honestly. Like, for costumes or the tattoos or whatever, or the look of a character, it would have to go through both of them. But so I would break it down that way. That's probably the most the easiest way to understand who was doing what.
That's pretty interesting. That's kind of the impression I got just from seeing Lloyd on set, but I never really heard it discussed before. So probably one of your most infamous scenes in the movie is your sex scene with Jane Jensen. And in the book, Lloyd talks about how uncomfortable on set that was to film. The book, All I Need to Know About Filmmaking, I learned from the Toxic Avenger. He talks about, just kind of the overzealous lighting guys. Is that pretty accurate to how it was?
It's funny because I have to say that, well, if he said it, then it's true. And the reason I say that is because like I was mentioning before, when you're doing something and you are really, this sounds very sexual, but I mean it technically, when you're like deeply into it. And by the way, when you're making these scenes, like sex scenes, for example, you want to get it right the first time. Why? Because you don't have to do it again.
Yeah.
And that's like your motivation. So you're just like so committed, so into it, like just going for it. And it, by the way, I mean, Jane Jensen, if there was ever to be a woman that was easy to work with and do this sort of thing, I just adored her. She was so easy to do these scenes with. I will forever be grateful to her. Trust me. Like, and she's so beautiful, and it was easy to, be attracted to her and do the scene. Just like, duh. It just was. But it was her personality that made it such. It wasn't like she was, really difficult person in reality and made it uncomfortable on a personal level, regardless of what she looked like. So she, as a person, made it insanely easy. Now, was it hard doing it? Like I say, it was more like my motivation was to just be really seriously authentic and truthful. And so I wouldn't have to do it again. And it being shot on film, there was a really good chance, if all the technical stuff was right, that's the other part of it, right? 50% of it is that. So if their side was good, I was going to make sure that our side was really good so that we'd be able to move on. And that was for her comfort too, because as easy as she was to work with and easygoing, I could, I was just like super aware of like, being, making everybody comfortable.
Yeah.
So I just, sincerely, from the bottom of my heart, went for it. And I was like, okay, we got this right, then we'll be moving on. Because the film, I mean,
Yeah.
the physical film too, that was a big part of it.
Well, and that's something I don't think the average moviegoer realizes. What you see on the screen, as opposed to all the inner workings, shooting sex scenes, as you know, is probably one of the more uncomfortable things in filmmaking. So
It really is. I mean, and then it's funny because the natural thing, as it's designed to do, is to be, I say sexualized, and that sounds like a judgment or something negative, but that's what it's designed to do. Like, so it is.
Yeah.
Like, so they're right, they're correct. Hopefully they do feel that way. But then when people talk to you about it and they act as though it was just another night for you that happened to be caught on film, you're kind of like, well, I'm glad that it worked, and I'm grateful that it worked. Trust me, because that was the point of it. That's your job as an actor, so it's a compliment. But if you think that that was just me being me, as people, at least they used to do. I don't know if they do this anymore, because everybody's so aware about film and filmmaking now, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
That they're not quite the same as they were back then, the viewers.
Was there anything, and just through all of the Troma career, was there anything where you had to tell Lloyd, like, that's too much, like, I'm not going to do that?
I really have to say, unless something comes to mind, I have to say no, because I've always read the scripts,
Yeah.
obviously, right? But I already know going in what I'm doing. So I'm not being on the spot exploited, because that's part of the storytelling that he's doing. That's his style. It's like saying to Lynch on the set of Crash, or excuse me, Cronenberg on the set of Crash. It's like, oh, I don't want to, do that, because no, that the movie's about that.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's like, it's crazy. What are you talking about? But it would happen to Lloyd. Like, if they didn't shoot, just like in his book, if they didn't shoot their sex or naked scenes first, and they had a whole bunch in the can and it was being shot on film, how easy was it? And it happened all the time, where people would suddenly say, I really don't want to do it, or start crying and say they don't want to do it. And what's he going to do?
Yeah. That
So that,
can,
and it really was like, there was a reason that he did that sort of thing. And by the way, it's good as an actor, because it gets that out of the way. You don't have to dread that day. You don't have to say, oh, okay, that day is in 2 weeks, and you're kind of thinking about that day the whole time. Whereas if you get it over with right away, you don't know the crew as well.
yeah.
It's out of the way. You're not thinking about it, and it's done. And now you can just concern about the acting.
On that, into acting, you play an actor in the next Troma movie, Terror Firmer. You play Christine. How is how is that kind of playing a almost like a parody of yourself in that movie, or a parody of, the screen queen, low budget actress?
Well, I can't even tell you what a joy it was, because I know the three people that he based the character on. And just like, it wasn't their whole being that he was basing it on, it was like his experiences. So it had nothing to do with me per se. I mean, I could
Yeah.
understand that it's an actress, right? But I knew the three people he was drawing from, and like the hard experiences that he had with them. So I kind of, like, I'd seen the movies and I knew the people. And so I kind of like knew exactly what he was looking for. And it was such a joy. I mean, really, it was just such a joy to be such an ass. Like, and again, it's just taking one tiny aspect of, whether it be these people or actresses in general, but then blowing it up to like cartoon size, right? And that was just going from like the seriousness of Ness to like the complete outrageousness of Christine. That was such a joy, I swear. And that for me is my, like, watching, I mean, not my performance, but like as a movie, that's my favorite Troma movie to watch.
Yeah, it's right up there for me too. It captures, like, I don't know, the perfect feeling of when you think of Troma, and the wackiness and the zaniness, and it's
Yeah.
yeah, it's so much fun. Terra Firmer kind of, it has the whole idea of, all these crazy, um you just people coming around to work on the movie. Was that how that was on set? I know you said people were coming and going, but on behind the scenes, and even on the documentary, you do see a little bit of the cast and crew. Was it as, like, looking forward, was it as crazy on that set, or did Terra Firmer kind of set that precedent of, this is how a Troma movie is?
I think you're right. I think it kind of set the precedent in a lot of ways, because there seemed to be a lot more people from away, like, from other countries and stuff, were starting to come on. And I think it was because of Tromeo and Juliet had really that really did a reset for Troma. Because prior to that, they were really like local movies, like looking, prior to that.
Yeah.
And with Tromeo and Juliet sort of like blowing open the doors to a new generation, then in Terra Firma, you had like, while a lot of the actors were Lower East Side stars, rock and roll stars, performance artist stars, like just all like local incredible artists. At the same time, you had like a lot of people coming on and just being so jacked to be there, because it was just electric with
Yeah.
people coming and going. And it really was, it had a completely different vibe. One is not better than another, but just different. And it was like so jacked with like press, constantly there. And it was like it was kind of a big deal. But again, being shot in Brooklyn, we were all going home at night, so we weren't sleeping there yet. That would be the next movie.
The next movie, which is Citizen Toxie.
Yeah.
Where you're Miss Wiener.
Yeah, Miss Wiener, absolutely. And
So,
I actually took the name from one of the producers on Terra Firma. His name was
funny.
Wiener, and I always thought he had the best name ever. So when I was doing Citizen Toxie, it just said teacher in the script, and I said, "Hey Lloyd, I think she should be Ms. Wiener," and he was like, "Okay, good."
So on Citizen Toxie, you were filming in a school, like was it an abandoned school or just closed for the summer?
It was. I'm pretty sure it was just closed for the summer. And oh my God, I can't even tell you how hot it was. There was no air conditioning, nothing. It was just like, it was brutal. It was up in Poughkeepsie. So this was the first time that everybody had gone to the set and just stayed there. Everybody from New York included. So that was a really different experience for the first time.
And in that scene you're talking about with no air conditioning, being super hot, you're like tied up to the ceiling wearing, the pregnant belly on there. How long of that shoot was there? Was that more than one day being tied up to the ceiling?
Yeah, that was really brutal. And not because, you're tied up to a ceiling, because I've done harder things in movies, but the weight of the belly, it was like a real prosthetic. It was like a foam piece where it was weightless.
Yeah.
So it was super, super heavy. So my back was just destroyed. Like it was really hard, because in the heat and the amount of hours we were shooting, wearing the belly, which was such a heavy piece for so many hours. Like it was everything you could do to just find a place anywhere, like on a bench or somewhere to lay down in between, just to rest your back, because the back was really going on that one. I gotta say, like it was that piece more than being hung up. That was the difficult part.
And I was watching the behind the scenes of that the other day, and that room shoot looked pretty unbearable for like tensions, because the guns aren't working. And did you get hit with any of the plastic shrapnel that was getting shot around the room?
I was very lucky that I did not. And it was, there was everything that could go wrong. It just seemed like, was kind of going wrong. It wasn't so wrong that we didn't get it. But this was the first movie that Trent was now in the place of Will Keenan, who was in the place of James Gunn. So on this show, it was sort of like Lloyd's right-hand man was Trent Haga. So, and Gabe Friedman too, but Trent was sort of the main guy. So the weapons guy, bless him for bringing all that stuff and everything, and doing the send up. It's not like a comedic one. There's a social point to it. So when I say that, it sounds heartless, but there was a social point to the school shoot up in that scene. So they obviously needed outrageous weaponry.
Yeah.
Like all kinds of rounds that just weren't, clicking in the guns. And, it was all done extremely safely. But then, of course, you had the plastic bullets. And so it was every time one would jam, which is like every 2 seconds, it seemed like everything went down.
Yeah.
And still on film. still shooting on film. So Lloyd was, understandably completely aggravated. And everybody was, the extras, the actors, the crew, everybody was just beside themselves, because it was one of those things where on a good day, everything goes well, you're still like dying of sweat. So when those things were going wrong, it was extremely stressful, because Lloyd was like completely losing it. And that didn't help,
Yeah.
because the stress on the guys with the guns, they were just like, so I mean, it was just like, just swirling out of control, the stress level. So
Were
yeah.
you there for much of the other parts of the shoot, or just mostly in that classroom scene?
I was there for a few other days. I was there for 10 days total, because I had like the outside of the school, which was a
Yeah.
different school, and the end scene, which I'm proud to say the fake freeze frame where everybody's just holding.
Yeah.
That was like my idea. I said to Lloyd, I said, we should just freeze and just pretend that we're frozen like a 70s movie. And then, Kabuki Man could wheel in, and it looks like, he's wheeling in the special effect. And he said, yeah, let's try that. And then they ended up, I was surprised that they ended up using it.
It's
But
pretty funny. It's a funny gag.
yeah, I thought it would be funny, like if we were all, because obviously somebody's going to move slightly, and the audience will see that, right? And it was like, I
Yeah.
said, look, Lloyd, it's like a special effect without any money, they're funny. And but God bless him, he used it, he went with it. So a lot of directors, I should say, would not, because that
Yeah.
sounds crazy. But I'm glad that he did. That was made me happy.
So after Citizen Toxie, it seems like there was a lot of stuff going on at the Troma offices that you were part of, like Parts of the Family, and then doing a voiceover in Doggy Tales. Doggy Tales, one of my, I unironically love that movie. There's something genius about it. I don't feel like Troma quite realizes that they have something pretty fun on their hands. Can you talk a little bit about Doggy Tales?
Yeah, Doggy Tales was funny, because it was just simply, the director, Paul, and I think it was Gabe was involved. All they really did to make, because, children's movies and voiceover, dogs and cats movies was all the rage. And
Yeah.
so, like, their only family venture, if you will, family film. And people to this day will look at Troma, and they'll look at the title of the movie, and they'll think that it's a porno movie. No, it is actually a family movie, a Troma family movie,
Yeah.
mind you. But it was basically the director, Paul, went out and literally just shot dogs in a dog like park area
Yeah.
in Central Park. I honestly, to the best of my knowledge, I don't even think any of the people knew their dogs were being filmed. Being really serious. He just got like a bunch of random footage of dogs. Like, it wasn't a bunch of dog actors that were involved. He just got this and cut it together so it seems like a story, and then did like the wraparound and then the voices. So I think it's like hilarious and genius all at the same time, because it's just, literally random footage of animals in a park, and you made a movie out of it. So I think it makes me laugh. It's really funny.
And I think it's pretty funny too, like of all the Troma produced stuff, it has probably one of the biggest like names as far as cast goes. It has you and James Gunn and Jenna Fisher in there in the Kids Dog movie.
Right, I know. And it was right at the same time where Jenna Fisher had made Lolly Love.
Yes.
Oh, Troma was putting that out. So almost like, I wouldn't say as a favor, because they're all friends, right?
Yeah.
But they were around during that time, because Troma was putting out Lolly Love with them. And so they just did some voices. And it was just, the timing was perfect, because, when could you ever get that to happen again?
Exactly.
So it's just like this amazing timing. And yeah, so it's got some really, really amazing people in it.
Can you talk a little bit? I'm going to kind of put these two together because they're pretty similar in vein, but Parts of the Family and Tales from the Crapper. Can you talk a little bit about making those?
Yes, and it really was the same time because I had just hurt my hand, like I had my fingers cut off in a shoot.
Well,
So
real quick, can you talk a little bit about that? I think it's an important story for beginning filmmakers is what not to do. In Terra Firma, there's the three rules of production: safety to humans, safety to people's property, and very small print make a good movie. Um, and
and
that was not followed on this movie. Can you talk a little bit about that?
absolutely, and people think that's just a joke, but in reality, it's really not because if you think about it, if you're not, unless you're a sociopath, you care about if people walk away hurt from your movie. Like myself, I would, while you can't be responsible for people's personal feelings, you can certainly assume responsibility for their physical wellness on
Yeah.
set. If they went off at night on their own and they did something, I'm not saying that's a good thing, but if something happened on their own time, you could still feel really bad. But it's not like it happened on your set. So yeah, this happened on a set, and what
It
should
wasn't a trauma movie. Let's just put that out there.
that wasn't a trauma movie at all. And really, the bottom line, what happened was what should have been, and I thought was a fake machete, was real. And I wailed down on it because I was, in the movie. Let's get clear here, killing somebody, and my hand, just seeing there's no hitch on a machete. My hand just went straight down with all the force of myself possible, like jumping off the ground type of force. And my fingers, except for the bones, my fingers, all the tendons and nerves and everything were cut off. So for about 2 years, I was like getting operations on it at my own expense, which, destroyed me financially on top of everything else. But during that period, and yeah, safety to humans, because honestly, that's a hard thing to live with. I mean, why would you want to live with that, let alone do that, have somebody have to live with it? I live with it for the rest of my life. I mean, I wake up every day with pain in my hand. So, and that was in 2002. So it's almost 20 years ago. It doesn't go away.
Yeah.
So that's the most important thing. And people who laugh at insurance, I remember for a little while after that, I would say to people, I'm not going on your set unless you have insurance, because this one didn't. And I was under the impression that they did, but they didn't. So from then on, I was like, besides the usual stuff and stuff that I don't think an actor should have to talk about, but in regards to your own safety, apparently you do and you should. Does this have insurance? And some people would say, well, I'm going to get it, but just for the days that you're there, or I'll get it because it'll make you feel comfortable. And I really didn't say anything because my main concern was just when I was there, but my answer should have been at the time, no, that's not the right answer. The right answer is you should have it for anybody, and you should have it not to make me feel comfortable, but to make everybody safe. I mean, it kind of blew my mind at first when people would talk like that, because it was the Wild West before that. I
Yeah.
mean, it was Wild West. And it might still be, but I don't work on sets that don't have it. But Lloyd would always have it. If he had nothing else, he would have insurance up the yin yang. Trust me, like he
Yeah.
would. He really would. So yeah, lived with that, but did the Parts of the Family with Lloyd in Central Park. And it was pretty funny because I still had my cast at that point. So I just spray painted it black. So it would just kind of blend in a little bit more. And also, yeah, for the Doggy Tales, I also was in the middle of a bunch of operations as well. So, but it was funny. And, doing the stuff in Central Park, I love the outtakes as much as anything else, because there's nothing that Lloyd can say or I could try to say to him, and we're just not, that we're not cracking each other up. And that kind of like, as small as that was, that movie and our part in it, really that ends up being some of my favorite time acting with Lloyd Kaufman, because it was just, there's no pressure. It was easy peasy, just a bunch of, lines in Central Park kind of randomly with the Troma microphone, like
Yeah.
we're news. And, we just got to be ourselves, and we just laughed so hard. And it was really, really good. It was turned out to be, as like I say, as small as the thing of it was like one of the best memories working with Lloyd.
And watching the outtakes on that, you can tell like just how good your guys' friendship is on
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So, I mean, I walk away from that one like, I hope the filmmakers aren't sad that we did that to one of their versions. Luckily, he put both on, so that's a
Yeah.
good thing. But, yeah, a really good memory. Really, really good memory in the middle of all that craziness with the hand, I mean.
And then kind of around that same time, you made a couple of short films that I really want to talk about with Jamie Greco, who worked at the Troma offices, and they're excellent if you haven't seen them. There's PDA Massacre, which is on the Best of Troma Dance Volume 3 DVD, and Mommy May I Sleep with Death, which is on the Debbie Rochon Confidential DVD, which
Yeah.
has all sorts of fun, just like the skits and stuff we were talking about on there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. Jamie and I, and then there's other shorts too that I don't know what happened with them, and I don't know where they are exactly, as far as whether they exist, because we did like 5 or maybe 6, but at least 5 short films. And they just got better and better and better with each one. So, I mean, they were all good, and they were all fun, and they were all done like with such heart. Like, Jamie is such an incredibly talented director, writer, really an amazing writer and performer. I mean, he's really got it all going on. So, I mean, our friendship and making those movies during that time was really very, very special for me. And I loved what he had to say in his movies. Like, he's straight from Troma in the sense that, he would never just make a short without having something said in it, even if it's just something funny or a throwback, like in Mummy May I Sleep with Death, like the whole, but he was like so far ahead of his time in so many ways, like making that short about, bring up the Solaris book, and, just like all of that stuff. Just what an incredible talent. And who knows, maybe still one day he'll put them all together and release them as the trilogy that he always wanted to.
I would love to see that. Jamie's voice, and I really recommend everybody seek Jamie's movies out, because they're funny. It's just something you don't typically see. There's definitely a Troma sensibility about him, but Jamie's voice is definitely unique when it comes to their movies.
And I am telling you, he has, like you say, he's got his own voice. Like, it's not, you never feel that, you feel like this is possibly a child of like John Waters and Lloyd Kaufman, but you never feel like it's a ripoff.
Exactly.
Because it was completely unique. And you can't buy that. You are that or you're not that. And he is that.
Yeah.
So please check them out. They're really good.
And so your relationship to Jamie, the time frame of that kind of leads into Poultrygeist, which was the first time I ever met you. I'm going to share my quick story about meeting you on set, and I kind of want to ask what happened with Poultrygeist. So I was a blood boy on set, and one day they're like, "Oh, Debbie's coming into set," and then I was probably in the basement stirring up gallons of blood. And then I remember it was like in the middle of the night, and Debbie Rochon is sleeping in the hallway. And then like, I just looked at my buddy who I was there with. It's like, now we're on a Troma movie. There's Debbie Rochon. And it's like, we gotta, get our shit together, because like, it's the real deal now. Like, the only other time I felt that way was when Lloyd showed up on set. and Joe Flyshaker. But it was like, oh my gosh. And then if I'm not mistaken, weren't you originally gonna be the pregnant lady in the movie?
Yes, the pregnant lady at the restaurant. That's correct. Yeah, that was what I came up for.
And
Hmm.
so you were there for maybe like 2 weeks, 1 week, or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. I
And
want
then
to.
and then and then one day, we got news from Jamie. It's like, well, Debbie has to leave, and me and one of the other blood boys helped carry your bags to the car, and you said goodbye to us, gave us a big hug, and we crossed the street back to the chicken bunker, not having shot anything with you. And we were all pretty upset that you left the set, and I just kind of want to know if you feel comfortable, like what happened. You later went on to have a cameo shot on the rooftop of the Troma building, where you have a famous actress having a beer thrown at her. But I want to know what happened in the middle.
Yeah, well, that's like an interesting story because if you were to go back, it's hard to say, like maybe everything would be exactly the same. It's really hard to say. But for me, I had just come off of all of the hand surgeries and realizing like, it was actually a bigger deal than it would seem. It wasn't like, oh yeah, got my fingers cut off and then everything was okay. No, it wasn't like that. It was like it took me years to really, get over it. Even though I saw pain, it took me a lot of years to get over it. So I probably, from the time of Citizen Toxie, I would say, which was shot, not released, but shot in '99. That was like the last movie I had done with them, besides the ones we spoke about. But I mean, Lloyd directed movie, I mean.
Yeah.
So between that time and then I had the hand stuff happen and the accident, all the operations and all this stuff was going on. And it was a really super dark period in my life. Like it was really bad. Depression was through the roof, like just the physical, between the physical and the rehabilitation and going through like such a pitch, and I really mean this, a pitch black period in time in my life. And I think I was up like, I don't know if it was like 10 or even 20 pounds. And so the lead actress, doesn't even matter saying her name, it's not the point of the story. The lead actress, a number of times when she would go by me, she would sort of say under her breath, sort of like, wow, she got fat. Or like, what a fatso. Or something like that. Like, but it was constant. And I would like say to Jamie, I'd be like, well, that's really difficult for me right now, because normally I probably turn around and fucking tell somebody off, like, fuck you, you don't know what I've been through, you don't know anything what's going on with me, and what have I got to do with you? Worry about your own role, right? But it just got to a point where I was like, why am I sleeping on the floor, eating cheese sandwiches, not getting paid? And I told Lloyd, like, I didn't like cry to him. I just told him, I said, this is kind of like weirding me out. And listen, he had to make his movie. I've been there. I've like directed a movie. You gotta soldier on, man. Like, and my part as the pregnant woman in the diner, or excuse me, the fast food place, was just, it was very small. So it wasn't like I felt like I was fucking anybody over at all. So I just said to Jamie, I was like, I can't justify this, even though in the big picture it's so meaningless, and chances are after this movie I'll never even see this person again. Just right now it's so not good for me, it's so dark for me that this is not this is not even being neutral. This is like harming me, in a sense, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's not about being tough. It's not about bucking up. It's not about any of that. Because when you're down that hole, anybody will tell you that, it doesn't take a whole lot. So that sort of constant badgering, if you will, that's kind of what did it. And I said, finally, to Kevin, who drove me back, I said, this is like so easy for Lloyd to get anybody else to do this part. It's just like, it's like a Ron Jeremy type of cameo. And I said, it's better for me if I go.
Yeah.
And so I went, because I didn't expect Lloyd to stop, and nor should he have. Let me get that straight, nor should he have. But seeing I did my little attempt to sort of like fix it, things needed to go on. And so I had to make that call. So I did. So I left, because I was like, yeah, I'm not going to go through all this for art if I don't even feel like there's art happening for me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like the opposite of art, what's happening for me. So I had to make the hard call, because it was for me. And somebody looking at the movie be like, well, it's not a hard call. It was like 2 seconds. Well, like when you're emotionally invested in, with Troma or with Lloyd,
Mhm.
then it is kind of a real super hard call. So that's what happened.
I appreciate you telling me. There was, rumors on set, but no one quite knew. And I just remember, giving you a hug goodbye. And I was like, man, but I'm really glad that you ended up being in the movie after all. Like, I was not expecting to see that. And so when I saw the movie the first time, like, I elbowed my buddy. It's like, oh man, like, I'm so happy that you ended up actually showing up in the movie. So
Yeah, and I give credit, well, of course, to Lloyd, because it's his movie. Nothing's going to happen without him. But I give credit to Gabe Friedman, who pulled that together and made it happen. And he's so awesome, and he did that because he was like, okay, this is the right thing to do. And everybody was back from Buffalo, and they were editing and stuff, and they were just like, let's throw this in and have Debbie. And so he's a great guy. He's a really damn good guy. And it's because of him.
awesome.
And
Well,
Lloyd, like I say, but you know what I mean?
I'm super happy to see that, that it just made my heart smile seeing you in the movie. So
Oh, that's awesome.
I loved watching, because you were with Jamie, behind the scenes, with the huge crowd, and you were helping psych him up and just get him ready. And a few years, well, quite a bit, because Poultry Guys took forever, but you directed your own movie, Model Hunger.
Mm-hmm.
So did you use, from all your years in Tromaville, what experiences did you bring over to directing your own movie? Like, what did you want to do, and what did you definitely want to stay away from doing?
Well, it's funny because it's the weird thing is that Jamie is not in Model Hunger. But here's the thing, like with my next movie, which is, taking longer because of the pandemic to get around, he's definitely earmarked, which I haven't even asked him, for a role in the movie. But because of the nature of Model Hunger, he's just such a thin guy. And the idea behind Model Hunger is it was just a different comment on things. So while the next one is very much up his alley, that one was sort of like, it was very difficult because, we couldn't pay people to be up in Buffalo and just be there on crew and just have like extra people. We had to have people that were local for a lot of the acting roles and the crew parts. But as a director, what did I bring? The thing that was most important to me, while I couldn't possibly throw money at every problem technically that may or may not come up, one thing I could do was get the best of the best for the acting. And so I tapped every friend that was right for every role that I could possibly get. Like called in every damn favor in the world, because I knew if I had nothing else, I had a script that I was in love with, written by James Mogart. And he was kind enough to let me do a lot of tweaking on set, but this is all James. And so my most important thing was to have the actors, do their thing in rehearsal, working with them if they weren't rehearsing, because they were just coming in from all over the world, by the way,
Yeah.
do their part. I knew that they could do it, like, because they were so good. So I called in every damn favor I had for the actors, because I knew the actors are going to be the thing that makes this movie fly or die. And yes, the technical aspects are really important, but a movie can look beautiful. And if you don't have amazing actors who have something to say because you have a great script, then who cares how pretty it is?
And I think your cast is also should be mentioned, like from the leading ladies of Tromaville as well. You have Lynn Lowry, who is in
Yeah.
one of Lloyd's first movies, and Tiffany Shepis,
Yeah.
and Babette Bombshell is in there as well.
Absolutely.
It is a great movie. I was telling Debbie before, but I was fortunate enough to see it, in a theater setting with other people, and that was so much fun. It's a fun movie.
Yeah. No, it is. And Brian Fortune, who was in Game of Thrones, flew in from Ireland to play Colin Sr. And he came in because I did Wrath of the Crows with him. And, like just the extent that people, and Voltaire, I mean, I met him a long time before that in New York. We were doing a convention in I don't even know what year it was, but it was a long time before that. Then when Fangoria Radio came together and they were starting to put together, like he had done, as you know, the MTV animation pieces.
Yeah.
When they started their channel. And so when Fangoria wanted to start a channel, which they didn't end up doing, but I brought him on board, so he was on salary there. So then as a favor back, he came out, and he wanted to do it anyway, but when I say favor, he didn't want to stay in a house or anything, so he put himself up in a hotel and flew himself up there, which is so kind because he understands budgets,
Yeah.
so he didn't have to do that, but he did do it. And you never see him do that again. You just, who can afford it at all times? But it was a good time for him to do it. So just, yeah, the amount of love and kindness was phenomenal. And like you say, I mean, it's the reason why it's a joy is because of this stunning set of actors.
And I'm super happy to hear that you're making another movie, because you have a voice that I want to hear more from on the other side of on both sides of the camera. But I'm super excited that you also wanted to venture into directing.
Yes. Oh, yes. Pandemic put everything kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But like I say, like I'm not going to rush around and slap something together and have my or anybody else's name on it. So that's why I've been like completely fine with going from something that was going to shoot in 2019 or 2020 to now 2022. So that's okay. Like, what's the rush with art?
Yeah.
Exactly. Paramount has not got a deadline for me. You know what I'm saying? Like, they have not. So I just want to do it right, and it will be done right.
Tickets sold already. I'm excited to hear.
Yay. Thank you, Zach.
Well, let's fly back to Tromaville for three more technically movies. So Return to Nukem High and Return to Nukem High. You play Coach Cotter, and I love your Cretan makeup that you can you tell people about your Cretan design?
My Cretan design, yes. Well, okay, so as you know, I'm sure that both movies were shot at the same time, and they were broken up into two pieces, to two bits. So to my understanding, I'm not in the second one because my death scene was shot in New York City by Doug Sackman, and I don't think Lloyd liked how it came out, because my head gets crushed in this shower where I'm like, being lecherous towards one of the girls, and one of the monsters in the movie comes and crushes my head. And he wasn't happy with how that was looking with the rest of the movie, so that wasn't even used. Maybe it's an extra. I don't even know if it is on part 2. But up in Buffalo, shooting the other scenes were a riot, and I definitely tapped into the Cretan world. But what I specifically did, I was doing like a callback for myself only, like it wasn't for anybody else there. I was sort of doing a callback to Ladies and Gentlemen, the Fabulous Stains. Like I completely redid the makeup exactly how it was done in that movie that was shot in 1980 when I was like a super young teen. I was like an extra on the movie for 3 months.
And
So
that was your first movie, right?
Yeah. And so I literally redid my makeup exactly like that movie. So there's kind of like a couple of throwbacks put together there. So it was really from that movie, but inspired by, okay, well, if this high school is like a bunch of new rockers, maybe there's some old rockers there too. So I kind of just went with that, as opposed to doing some school marmy. Already kind of did like a 50s type of teacher in Citizen Toxie. That's how I kind of looked at her. Like I got the wig, and I got like certain things to sort of have a 50s vibe to her. Try to, but and with the glasses and everything. So with this one, I was like, well, what if she's like an old rocker, like an old Gen X rocker that's teaching these kids. So that's kind of where I was coming at with that one, who's lecherous. Now we're going to a throwback from Romeo and Juliet, but a lecherous lesbian. So like, yeah, we're getting them get all the stuff together and kind of like do it up like that. But that was a lot of fun, and that was. Those poor people like Babs and everybody were sleeping in the basement of a crematorium or something like that, or a funeral parlor or something. So, woo! Yeah, I had friends up in there because I had just made Model Hunger, so I was staying with them. But the Troma crew and cast really, like, they really sweated it out for that one, boy. Holy cow.
Yeah, it's one of those. I don't know if the living conditions were worse on Poultrygeist or Return to Nukem High. They both sounded about equally. We didn't have Black Widows, as far as I know, on Poultrygeist, but I hear on Return to Nukem High some of the crew got Black Widows like crawling around on them.
Oh my God. That, like, there's a lot of conditions that have never bothered me because I've always been there for the art, but I'll tell you something, poisonous spiders, I would be wide awake with a flashlight, just like not sleeping for the 2 weeks like this, because I have such a fear of poisonous spiders. It's horrible.
Oh, no.
Horrible. Like that's my kryptonite. So man, I give them so much credit. They were awesome. Yeah, they were so awesome. And then you had great people like, Sam that I knew from Buffalo was like, he was amazing on that, working on that movie. And there's so many good people from like the Poultrygeist shoot, and then from like the Slime City Massacre shoot. So you had like two worlds coming together, and like a lot of the people that worked on Model Hunger, they were working on, because he shot his movie directly after Model Hunger. They were in pre-production for the Return to Class of Nukem High 2 set when we were shooting Model Hunger. So Lloyd was already up there when he did his bit for Model Hunger, which was cut as mine was, which he was, honestly, I think he's still mad at me because he was not happy. But I at least told him, well, we were both cut. You know what I mean? I cut myself. It was just a matter of timing. And they're on the DVD. I mean, if you want to see Lloyd's hilarious door-to-door salesman, it's on the DVD, and he is hilarious. But there's a point in any movie where you're sort of like, okay, we have to like start getting to the story. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you got to cut out all there's bits you love no matter what, but it doesn't help the movie.
Yeah, and that's all it was. And like I went to the garbage can too. Like we both did because we were both like door-to-door salesmen that came to the every Mr. Winter's door before the cheerleaders do. Enough to see the movie to know what I'm talking about. But they're actually the third group where that's why he's so frustrated.
Yeah.
And he's saying, "You deviants," because like I'm trying to sell, a lesbian sex book, and Lloyd's trying to sell dildos. It's like crazy. It's all over the map. So by the time they get there, Mr. Winters is like, "You're all a bunch of deviants." It's really what he's saying, but nobody knows necessarily why, and that's okay. It still works. But yeah, if you want to see Lloyd's amazing, and I do mean that, hilarious door-to-door salesman, you got to get the DVD. So he's still mad at me. Sorry, Lloyd. Look, I'll be sorry till I'm 6 feet under. What can I say?
Well, and then I think we should talk about the most recent Troma movie, which I haven't seen yet, just at pandemic. Hashtag Shakespeare Shitstorm. We play Senator Sebastian. And all I know is I've seen you with some prosthetics and a sombrero.
Yeah. Oh, my God. There's so many stories about this one. This is like, it's hard to say, but could it be like it's impossible to say that any one of Lloyd's pieces of art, because I really look at them like that, and I'm dead serious.
Yeah.
So it's impossible to say one person's piece of art is better than another piece of their art. But this one is like so far up there because what it has to say, the commentary on current things like social justice warriors and cancel culture, but so much more than that, like big pharma and just like everything what you would expect from Lloyd, but just with so much panache and outrageousness. And the song and dance numbers are in there, which is super cool. And which is like, it seems like he really likes them because it's like a standard now.
Yeah.
Like since Poltergeist.
He loves musicals.
Yeah. I mean, they're there pretty much for the most part. But it was really an amazing shoot because we were shooting again in Queens. And it was sort of like the first time Lloyd came back to shooting in an area where he can go home at night. So, and I will always love shooting in the New York metro area. So that was a joy for me too. But yeah, again, the talent, what it has to say, some of the stories are hilarious. Like when the ship, basically streamlining the storyline without giving anything away. There's a ship of a bunch of like complete assholes, like, and I'm one of them. And we're like part of Big Pharma. And we're in the belly of the boat, like partying it up, drinking, doing coke, all this kind of stuff, like just being assholes, like money grubbing, who cares about people type of people. And I am the sidekick of the Lloyd female character. He plays brother and sister. And so they're going to ultimately, the boat will crash, and it's going to crash up on Tromaville, New Jersey. And then everything goes from there. But yeah. Before it crashes because of the whale's fecal matter. Basically, there's so much of it that it basically topples the boat like an iceberg did with Titanic, but it's with whales jumping over the boat and dumping on the boat. So, yeah, go figure. It's an ecological statement right there. And but when the boat is going down, everybody basically gets like literally a boatload of fake shit dumped on them, like, in their, sort of shot, right? So it cuts everybody getting like dumped on by shit. And so when me and Lloyd were doing ours, we were like obviously faking snorting coke and all that and partying up the storm, and then the crap gets dumped on us. And Lloyd, being the trooper, like he'll always let everybody go first, and it was the same crap, so to speak, like special effects crap, but crap nonetheless, being like taken up off the floor and put back into the vats. So being the last people shot, this is now not just special effects crap, it's like everything else I went with it. Oh, no. Like of all those shots beforehand, as you know how it goes. and Lloyd being like a total trooper and wanting to do his last so that, everybody else could have like fresher shit. But I was in the shot with Lloyd, so that meant I went last. So it's like the whole time I'm like, oh my God. It's not having it done was an issue, but my mind imagining at this point, after like, I'm over guessing probably, but let's call it 50 dumps. Like, what on earth is in there? Like, it's just, I gotta not think of this. Like, going back to Romeo and Juliet, just gotta do it really, really good, so we don't have to do it once. Like, oh, here we go again, right? So we did it, and it happened, and yeah, it was super, super gross, but hopefully it looks good, because that's at the end of the day. If you got the shot, then that's great. But it was like, and then after that, the funny thing was, I said, okay, I'm completely, absolutely top to bottom caked in whatever this is.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, how do I get washed up before you go in a vehicle? Like, you certainly can't go in like that. So they said, okay, yeah, go out the back. We were shooting at a restaurant, right? So the inside of the boat was one side of the restaurant made up. And then the party room for when we get to where we're going in Tromaville is the other half of the restaurant. It was massive, but they did it like that. Built one to look like inside of a boat. So they said, go to the back of the restaurant, and the PAs have it all handled. I was like, oh, great, okay. So I go to the back, and the PA said, oh, great, okay, yeah, no problem. We've got this hose, and we're outside. We're in like an alleyway, mind you, but we're outside. Yeah. And they said, so all you gotta do is take off your clothes, and we just hose you down. And I'm like, what? Like, what? You mean the humiliation goes on? Okay. But you know what? I totally did it, because it's trauma. And I was like, okay, I signed up for this. I'm going to go out all the way. I'm going to go, okay, fine. So I took all of my clothes off, and I was hosed down in an alleyway behind the restaurant with a smile on my face. And I was grateful to get it off. So that poor PA, because at first I was like, never did I complain, mind you. That's the truth. But I was just sort of like, I had to wrap my head around the idea for a minute. So I had to take a minute and go, okay, I can do this. I'm over 50, and I'm in the back alley, and I have to get naked with caked on fake, but I'm going to do it. But I am going to damn well do this. I'm going to do it Troma style. I'm not going to like say, no, I'm not going to do it. So I did it. And well, it was, probably the funniest story from it all. But I got to work with Lloyd, and hearkening back to like what we're talking about, parts of the family. It was such a joy, because we had so many laughs. Like, he still was directing, so it still had that other element. He had a lot of pressure on him.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it was amazing, because I got to work with him as a sidekick for one of his two characters, and that made it like such a joy and fun. A lot of laughs, a lot of great times.
I'm super excited to see that. I can't wait. Well, before we wrap it up, I want to just do like a quick rapid fire where you say one or two things about these other movies that you're in that Troma put out. So the first one, Hell Block 13.
Oh my God, Gunnar Hansen. The meeting of Gunnar Hansen, working in a shutdown, freezing cold prison, but loving every damn second of it, because I got to be with Gunnar that I knew before, but it was the first time we worked together, and it was epic.
Meatweed America.
The interesting movie, just really kind of weird, because I came in and I did the scenes, and I don't really have a lot of anecdotes about it, except for the director was an extremely sweet young guy. And I don't know what became of him. Maybe he's like a big Hollywood guy now. I don't know. But a lot of fun. Brief.
Attack of the Tromaggot.
Attack of the Tromaggot was a fellow, and I want to say he's from Germany, put together some scenes that I did, like random stuff when we were in Cannes promoting probably Citizen Toxie at that point. So he just kind of shot weird stuff, and he was staying there too with us in the apartment. So he probably just shot us doing weird shit. Hey guys, let's shoot something. And so I don't even know what's in there. Which makes it even better. It makes it even funnier.
The Chainsaw Sally show.
Amazing, good friends, lifelong friends, Jimmy and April O'Brill, and man, good times. And I did 2 seasons. Always hope to do a 3rd or an animated version. And you never know, maybe we will. We will. But yeah, people love it too. People love it. It's fun, and I love working with them. Loved making the Good Sisters with them. Was truly an epic experience. So they're family. They're my family.
VHS Massacre.
Yeah, so here's some guys that I did like the Bikini Bloodbath series with. They did 3 of those movies. We did Mark of the Beast, Kipling's version of Kipling's story. Pretty well kept to the original story too. So did all those movies with them, and then they, Thomas Seymour, I should say, anyway, of the duo, did VHS Massacre, and I came on as not just an interviewee but a producer. And then we made a second one because the first one did well. The story wasn't completely told yet, and now we're working on a new documentary, untitled, like sort of it's off in the distance, but we're beginning to work on it, where Troma picked up a bunch of movies from the library of a film company, and so we're going to be doing a documentary, not VHS Massacre 3, but a new documentary on these particular movies, like action movies from the 80s and 90s. So It's very exciting. Yeah.
Teen Ape versus Monster Nazi Apocalypse.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Which is funny to say real quick. Like you're in a bunch of Chris Seaver movies, and this is the only one that Troma's put out, but they're all very Troma.
They're all very Troma, and it was funny because it was a lifelong dream of Chris to be able to combine his work with Troma. And I met Chris through Doug Sackman. So it's all like kind of perfect that the full circle would be that. And yeah, I mean, it was absolutely a joy, and it was funny as hell. And I think people who like Troma and like Chris Seaver will definitely like it. I mean, I think it was an end of an era for him. I think he went on to do like a different kind of movie ever so slightly, if that makes sense. Yeah. But it was the last movie I'd done with him. And we just actually spoke about it because his movies are coming out on a special release via Tempe Video.
That's awesome.
So I think that's going to be a part of it, I'm pretty sure anyway. But yeah, we talked a lot about it on that, but I love Chris Seaver so much. Another child of Troma in his own way, but a unique voice like Jamie.
Exactly. You're in a bunch of his movies, and Mulva is Zombie Ass Kicker, and people should definitely check him out.
Love working with him. Just want to say too, like the thing with him is, man, if you have a good idea, he will do it. He is so into improv. He's very clear about what he wants. Don't get me wrong. He's like to the letter, but at the same time, he's all about making things better and better and better. So I love the reason I love working with him. I just want to say that, like, improv with the right people is like, there's nothing better because you improve upon something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then finally, this one is pretty new news as of this recording. Frankie and Blunderland.
Yes, that's actually a movie I did a few years back. I was Caleb, who I met on Citizen Toxie. He was in that movie. He was one of the Diaper Mafia, and he also was, I don't know if he was he was a line producer on Poultrygeist.
He's an assistant director on Poultrygeist.
I'm so sorry. Yeah, I apologize. Assistant director, big difference. Yeah. And he made his own movie. I was out in LA doing a guest spot on the reality series called Scream Queen, not to be mixed up with the narrative series. There was like a show. There was 2 seasons, and Jamie King was the main, I guess you would say, judge or mentor of the girls. And I went on for 1 episode as like a guest judge for like this photo session. So I was out in LA, and he was editing it. And so he said, hey, I want you to come and be a spider. And then if you harken back to my fear, I was like, Yeah, I want to be a spider. Like, I haven't done that. Like, I'm all about doing things I've never done. So I love mad scientists. Like, I love things that I have never done. Like, that's sort of my thing. Like, yes, another thing to check off the list. So yeah, be a spider. And we just literally shot it in my hotel room because he was just really looking for the face to put onto the spider anyway, so we could do it anyway. So he put up all the black caping and shot me for a couple of hours as doing dialogue as a spider. And so that was a few years ago, I want to say 2012 or 2013. But now it's coming out on Troma now, like just now. Keep saying now. But yeah, it's new to Troma, and I highly recommend it. Highly recommend it. It's a head trip, and it's a great head trip.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Well,
as a spider, Zach.
I can't wait to see you as a spider. I love Caleb's movies. I like Die You Zombie Bastards and Red Breakfast. I haven't had a chance to watch it yet, but I will before. I'm going to talk to him actually next week, so I'm going to watch it before.
Good. Oh, tell him I said hi. I love that man. I love that. He's a good guy. I'm telling you.
He's awesome.
You got to keep them, the good ones.
Keep them close. We're all part of the Troma family here. So
yeah, I couldn't agree more, Zach. True. And the other ones can fall away. And meanwhile, the core people will just go on loving each other.
Exactly.
Yep.
Well, I think that about wraps it up. Is there what's next that we all should be looking for from Debbie Rochon?
Well, there's a couple of movies that I'm going to be doing this fall, but with the pandemic, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. I mean, Guns of Eden with Greg Lamberson in Buffalo, Damnation of Dracula, an amazing take on Dracula in the indigenous world in Ontario. It's being shot, so it's an amazing new take on Dracula. And there's a few others and a lot of radio stuff, like radio plays, I mean. But I don't want to get too far ahead. So perhaps, because things can change. They probably won't, but you just never know. So if people just go to debbierochon.com, I usually put all the news up there just to be safe.
And where can they follow you on the socials?
Well, like I say, if they go to debbierochon.com, because it's so much easier, all the links are there. Because most places it's see, on Facebook, it's Debbie Rochon News. On Twitter, it's Debbie Rochon. On Instagram, it's official Debbie. So it's kind of not the same thing. So if they really want to come and see me, they really want to, all you got to do is go to the old-fashioned URL, debbierochon.com. But all the links are there to make it easy.
Awesome. And thank you so much for coming on. And as for me, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Lego Larry. You can follow the show at Talkin Troma. And always, stay traumatized.